We are live. Welcome, everyone. My name is Niki Lopez of What's Your Elephant, and this is The Art of Justice. This is a virtual showcase featuring a performance by text-based artist Sheree L. Greer. So this is The Art of Justice, using the arts as a catalyst for social justice. This is a program that is being done for the Mizell Community Center. This program is supported and funded by the Community Foundation of Broward that is supporting this project. This is The Art of Justice, which is, it's been 8 sessions so far. So 4 art making workshops and community dialogues and 4 showcases. This is the final of the showcase. And then in January of 2022, we will be having a culminating event. So right now it will be virtual, but hopefully the YMCA is being rebuilt in a new location in sistrunk. And hopefully if it's open that we can be in person and socially distanced, but we're hoping those turn out. But if any event, if it's the building is not complete, we will still have a virtual culminating event, which is going to showcase some of the artwork from the Call to Artists, which is still active, some of the artwork from the workshop that has been done during the art making workshop, as well as some performances from local and national artists. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So let me just go here. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen and go through some of the slides that we have here. So like we said, today, this is the final showcase. The focus is solidarity, collectively working for change. We have our feature who's on, Sheree L. Greer, and she was also part of the art making workshop that we had last week that was led by Kaula Notre Dame. So the YMCA Mizell Community Center, Niki Lopez of What's Your Elephant presents The Art of Justice, a catalyst for social justice and collective action, an art making series that features social justice themes, presentations, artist-led workshop, literary, visual, and performing arts, and culminating showcase that highlight the work created by the workshops, encouraging critical conversation about access, advocacy, agency, and collective action. This program is an opportunity for members to come in the community to come together to create art in response to social justice themes that affect their livelihood, reflect in their experiences. There's no formal art background required. And if this is your first time, or if you want a refresher, all of the videos are on Facebook under Niki Lopez Creative, or under YouTube under Niki Lopez 19. You could still watch the videos. You could still create some art. You could still submit it before January to be a part of the culminating exhibition. So a little bit about the Art of Justice and the symbol. The symbol came out of an Ndikra symbol, and is the chief of the Ndikra symbols, which symbolizes greatness, charisma, and leadership. This symbol is said to have played an inspiring role with designing the other symbols, and it signifies importance of playing a leadership role. For those who may not know, the Ndikra symbols are out of West Ghana. So that's just one of the ways where when I'm bringing a program together that I use not just the words, but symbols and everything to elevate the program. So solidarity, collectively working for change. And that was the focus of the workshop and today's showcase. So solidarity action refers to working with others to perform for the collective betterment. It requires the recognition of injustice and knowledge of society to navigate the social landscapes within power, privilege, and oppression, to work across differences, to find a common ground, to achieve equality within humanity. This lens inspires solidarity action through the arts. It requires coalition building within a group of networking with other groups through empathy, cooperation, and effective conflict resolution. So like I said, last week we had an art making workshop that was led by Kaula Notre Dame. I see Kaula online. I don't know if she's available to talk a little bit briefly about her workshop, but let me see if she's
Niki, she's not available at this moment, but if you could hit the present button so we could see the screen's full slide, because they're kind of small.
Oh, yeah, thank you. So this was the workshop that we did last week. Like I said, again, you could go to Facebook or YouTube if you want to watch the workshop, hear some of the dialogue that we had. It was a really great workshop that night. And we had young and old people creating art and, you know, talking about the focus that we have here. So this is just a little example of some of Kaola's work, as well as what, you know, one of the workshop that she did where we took pieces of paper, things that were all accessible that you don't have to go out to an art store to get, right? Paper, something to draw with, tape, glue, patience, and a tiny bit of trust. And if you watch the video, she'll go through explaining what we did in terms of taking paper, creating symbols that were meaningful, and you know, creating from those different papers a final piece. So this is just a little snapshot of what we had that week. And these are some of the projects that was created in the workshop. So like I said, people, you know, were given prompts to create certain symbols. And then we use those different papers to put it together and create something different and glue them together. Like that example of the, I think it's Consigo art, where when things are broken, they're put back together and they're not just beautiful, but also stronger than originally. So these were a couple of the pieces. We had quite a few people in the workshop, but you know, we have some people who also submitted some of their work. So these are the different works that was created. And if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to kind of jump in and ask or throw it in the chat. I'll be checking the Facebook as well to answer those as well. So we're just going to go through some of the pieces. And so as we talk about solidarity and collective action, one of the things I wanted to showcase is one of the collectives I'm a part of, Artists for Black Lives Matter, where there's a group of artists that goes into schools. We talk to children, elders, DJJ sites, community centers, and we talk about any loss of life due to an unjust reason. So we use it under the umbrella of Artists for Black Lives Matter. It's not affiliated with the National Black Lives Matter movement, but it's just art and creative expression, talking about racial injustice. So these are one of the ways that we've used our, you know, collective art and, you know, coming together as one group to talk about issues, to talk about challenges, and to create change and bring awareness, right? And you have to know what are some of the issues before. And so these are just some of the examples how we're coming into groups and making art and having dialogue, or using art as a form of poetry and performance to reach more people. This is also another piece of art that was submitted. Artists for Black Lives Matter has a collection of probably about 200 pieces people send in every time we have an open call for artists, talking about not just racial injustice and loss of life, but also positive images of collective and positive images of, you know, Black people. And so there's more. If you want to find that, it's on Instagram and Facebook. So I'm going to invite, we do have an artist. So we have an active call of artists. So if you're an artist and you want to submit artwork, you could submit it here. We do have some work that was submitted by an artist, Stephanie Mcmillan, and she's going to talk a little bit about the two pieces that she has and a little bit of background about her work. So I'm going to turn over to Stephanie.
Thanks, Niki, so much for inviting me to be part of this conversation and including my work in this great program and this great series that you're having. I like to make art that is against capitalism, imperialism, and that encourages us to dream about a different future. The two drawings that are presented here, this one and then the following one, are they were both made at the request of organizers in Oakland, California, who are fighting for better working conditions in healthcare and education. So I felt like they really fit in with your theme of solidarity, in that I created them in an act of solidarity, and it shows kind of like how art is can be supportive of movements that are organizing in the real world, in workplaces and communities, which is really where the struggle happens. But art is a supportive type of thing that can reach people through emotion and build solidarity also through the content, which they requested what the content was. So I think both of them reflect what they're going to be using it for, which is posters to build solidarity for their particular organizing efforts. So the first one, the one that was before, is focused on the struggle of workers internationally against the system of capitalism, imperialism, and all the different manifestations of it. The way that capitalists build their wealth on the backs of the people, on their labor, and on the exploitation of workers and the destruction of the environment. And they use all these different tools of violence and repression to keep that power and keep that wealth flowing to them, such as the state and the media, their war machine, and all those different aspects. So the other one shows, rather than, well, it shows the negative. As you were saying, we need the negative and the positive. So it shows the negative being swept away and the positive being dreaming of a new future. And solidarity is the only way that we can achieve that future. If we come together and build power, enough power to challenge and overcome these systems of oppression, exploitation, and ecocide, then we can open up the possibilities of building new societies, or a society where all can thrive. So that's what these are about. And again, thank you so much for including them. And I look forward to listening to the rest of the program.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. And can you just say really quickly where people can find more of your work?
Oh, yes, thank you. I also offered these drawings and other drawings for free for people to download and use on posters if they want to. And those are on my website in the shop section. The website is stephaniemcmillan.org. And there's also a free PDF of a book that I wrote about capitalism. And it's a brief introduction with cartoons about what capitalism is, why it's bad, and how we can come together to overcome it.
Thank you.
And you don't have to leave your email address or anything. You can just download it directly. I don't ask for anyone's information.
It's interesting when you mention about building power, and I think sometimes that part is out of conversations. Like, we see all these things that we feel needs to change, and that's why solidarity is so important, right? Because we could build power in bodies and masses, but how do we build power to impact significant change, in the community and in the world?
Yes, exactly. And we're also taught so often that it's an individual problem, or that we have to overcome them individually, but it's only by coming together. And the people who run this society, the capitalists who control, the whole economy and how we live our lives, they have built power and through their solidarity. So I think it is something to think about, how we can do that. That's the only way we can really overcome their different forms of, oppression and exploitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, comments, feedback so far, or anything for Stephanie? I'm not, let me see, checking the chat. Oops. Oh, I see. Oh, Kyle says, Stephanie, you're doing great work. Thank you. So I'm looking at some of the things in the chat. And I think it's really nice that you not only have your artwork for people to, see and purchase or experience, but you also have it where people could just download and use it, for whatever their needs are, whether it's, creating, supporting what they're doing in their neighborhoods. And I think that's a nice example, because sometimes some people may not be motivated because they feel like, what can I do? Or I don't have money, or I don't have this. And this is an example of you using your skill and talent and sharing that with the world. So that's really a nice example that you're doing with your work.
Oh, thank you. I know for artists, there's so much pressure to make a living, and it's really hard for any artist to do that. And so we're always trying to like sell things or whatever. But I think for my political work, I think it's important not to profit from that and to use it as a contribution, because some things are just beyond the transactional. You know, it has to be part of what comes from our heart.
Absolutely, absolutely. And if you can, right? Because sometimes people are not in that position. So even
right.
having that, you know, if you're in a position of that type of privilege where you're able to do that, I think that's a beautiful thing. Because sometimes people is like, okay, I want to do this, but I also I have to keep the lights on. So like
absolutely,
we do. So
yeah, we're in this trap, you know, of basically a system of extortion where you have to make money or you don't eat. So everybody has to do what they have to do. There's no shame there. But I do sell art also, but not the political stuff, or some political stuff, but not the most political stuff. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let me see here. Thank you so much, Stephanie. So
thank you, Niki.
Slides. So we do, like I said, we do have a culminating event coming up. Right now, we have a tentative date of January 8th. Like I said, right now it's scheduled to be a virtual, so you could still go and RSVP to be on the next virtual, the culminating exhibition. However, we are hoping that possibly the LA Lee YMCA will be open and that we could do a hybrid of in-person as well as virtual, because we have, you know, one of the beauties of virtual is that everyone doesn't have to be local. So we still get access to the local community, but being virtual, I mean, we started this program, I think probably the end of July, August. And so we've had both local and national people on the calls. So even if we do a in-person program, we will make it accessible for those who've been following the journey from their homes or wherever they're at, that's outside of Broward County. So definitely look up for that. So this is what some of the programs we've had so far. Like this is the last showcase. We've had a workshop. So the workshops are generally have a focus. We have an art, we have dialogue, and then the showcase of that art and, you know, kind of a summarization. So if you want, you know, there's some things that may come up with the showcase, but if you want like an in-depth experience of the conversation, definitely go back and look at the workshops. They have a lot of good stuff in there. So this program is brought to you by Community Foundation of Broward. It's supported by Oakland Park Women's Club, David and Francine Horvitz Family Fund, Ann Adams Fund, and Mary and Alex McKenzie Community Impact Fund. And if you want to find out more about this program, if you go to whatsyourelephant.org/theartofjustice, you'll find out more about the program, and you could link to, you know, what's happened so far. You could also watch the episodes that's passed on the YouTube. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen right now. And let me just check Facebook. So yeah, as we're talking about the focus, which is solidarity, collectively working for change, I wanted to kind of throw that out there to everyone who's on the call. If anyone has an example of what they do, what their organization does, or where they feel something is possible in that focus of coming together in solidarity. And so if anyone has any feedback they want to share or any experiences, I'm gonna check. Oh, Vicky said, nice to know about your work, Stephanie. So anybody wants to share or introduce themselves? Oh, I see Connie McKnight on Facebook. Hello, Connie. Anyone? Okay. that is fine. So since we don't have, I don't see, it's always interesting with the virtual program. Sometimes people are very talkative, and sometimes just like, hey, it's Saturday, we're chilling and listening. So either way, we appreciate you all being here with us today. So since we've gone through the slides, we've gone through kind of like a little summary of what we did last week, as well as showing some of the artwork, I'm going to bring in our feature performer. She is a text-based artist and founder of Kitchen Table Literacy Arts. Sheree L. Greer is a text-based artist. She's out of Tampa, Florida. In 2014, she founded the Kitchen Table Literary Arts Center to showcase and support the work of Black women and women of color writers, and is the author of 2 novels, Let the Lover Be and Return to Arms, and a short story collection, Once and Future Lovers. So with that being said, I'm going to welcome Sheree to kind of close us out and share her work.
Hey, thank you, Niki. Thank you so much for having me. It's been really interesting to watch these different showcases and the workshops and see how that intersection of art and community activism, it feels just like a natural kind of relationship, right? We think about how artists that choose to have, like a social practice part of their art making, you have no choice but to respond to the work around you, the world around you. And so it's been awesome to kind of see that through the different lenses and the different artists you've had. You've had like visual artists. I think there was a singer-songwriter. It's just been really amazing to see. So thank you for inviting me to be a part of it. I like to use my time to be both to like share some of my work, but to also invite you all to respond and kind of engage in conversation based on the work. I dropped my website and Kitchen Table Literary Arts website in the chat right before I went on. So you could feel free to learn a little bit more about me and my work and about my organization. Kitchen Table Literary Arts was inspired and founded with the idea of community and solidarity in mind. When I graduated with my MFA and started like trying to be a writer in earnest, whatever that was gonna be or look like, I went to school in Chicago, I got to Florida, and I was like, well, where are all the writers at? And then more specifically, where are all the Black women writers? And I did some informal kind of writing groups and things like that. And just this idea of the community that you're seeking is more often than not seeking you. And so I've been really thinking about when I think of solidarity and I think of community, I think of how it is both the individual and the group at the same time. Like you come to it as an individual looking for something for yourself, but by virtue of seeking it, you're also sort of inviting a group aspect or a collective aspect. And then once you have formed a group, a collective, you are now both yourself, the individual, but you are also a part of a group. The workshop that I taught a couple of weeks ago, a writer said that she was trying to make sure her work reflected the me and the we. And I like to think about that in the work that I'm doing. So to kick us off, I'm gonna read a very, I guess, a intimate individual piece. It is from a anthology called Let's Talk. It is a collection of Black lesbian short fiction. And I have a short story that I'm gonna read called I Can't Turn It Off. I watch Akua sleep sometimes. Creepy, I know, but I don't care. I smile at the slight flare of her nostrils, the delicate puff of air when she snores. She smells like black soap and cocoa butter. I imagine us old. Black don't crack, so we won't crumble. And at 60, Akua's afro is speckled with copper, a contrast to my platinum dreads. We still go for walks, still cuddle to watch movies, still randomly burst into 90s R&B jams. I smile at the thought, looking down at her. the sheet pushed down to her waist. Her skin is warm and brown and catching the blue moonlight through the blinds just right. I make believe she's been sleeping beside me forever, and I'm still not tired of it. I love her, and I will marry her. After all, it's legal now, just like killing Black kids is. Oops, I didn't mean to say that. Don't write angry, don't drive angry, don't make love angry. I can't help it though. I kiss Akua awake and look in her eyes as they flutter open. I kiss her again, a smash of lips, even a grazing of teeth. There's a thumping like someone's trapped and trying to get out. We find each other's blaze and we dig it. Sweat runs down my back like oil down a neighborhood street. Yes, oil down a neighborhood street. That really happened. We're getting it in now, and it's warm and dark like a rainy night in Central Florida, like pull up your hood but keep stepping. We're almost home. I'm scared though, scared of being followed and hunted, but they say they're scared of me. I am drowning even though my mouth is dry. I'm thirsty but can't drink the water. These thoughts don't belong, like chemicals I can't pronounce poisoning the river. Wade in the water, children, but it smells funny. It tastes funny. It feels strange against my skin. I'm tingling. Akua grabs my face and brings me back. Where are you? She asks. I'm here, I say. She wraps her arms around me. We hold each other closer than close, breathing the same. My stomach is in knots. It aches, feels empty, like all those folks going hungry since they passed that farm bill. They're taking food stamps from people who need them, from children and families and people who look like my grandparents. And I think I might cry now from the hunger. I'm starving. I try to focus on my woman, my love, but can I trust her? Is she real, organic? Maltodextrin, monosodium glutamate, cellulose, and sodium nitrate. Naked ain't really naked, and we are what we eat. I wanna ask Akua if she's real, if I can trust her to feed and be fed, if we can live together and keep each other alive. She's so good to me. She makes sure I get rest and lets me talk mess when I need to. She tells me I'm full of it when she needs to, and maybe this will work. I kiss her again, wanting to feel certain. My mind a frenzy, my heart in my throat. I can't speak, but I wanna say something important. I settle for something sweet. Baby, I love you. Akua smiles. Does she know I'm all over the place? My mind searching for peace, my heart aching for home. How do I do this? Balance eludes me and I wanna ask for help. Is there anyone out there? I wander up to a stranger's house and ask for assistance, love thy neighbor, but blam, a shot in the face. I squeeze my eyes tight and try to focus. Did Rakia even get a chance to scream? Last words rush my brain, pressing against the back of my teeth. Please don't let me die. What are you following me for? It's not real. Why did you shoot me? I can't breathe. I love you too, Mom. I'm going to college. You shot me. You shot me. I mumble as Akua's lips graze mine. What you say, baby? Akua asks, looking into my eyes. You got me, I whisper. You got me. I'm yours. Akua bends to press her full lips against each of my eyelids. I keep them closed as she kisses the bridge of my nose. Then her mouth kisses my mouth. Gently, lightly, an invitation, but I'm lost in the darkness. Akua searches. She's always searching, and she finds me. She always finds me. She knows I'm aching, I'm hurting, I'm needing, I'm wanting, hoping for more her, more love, more justice, more nourishment, more safety, more. I can barely see. I'm sweating and crying. I wish I could turn it off. I'm here with her, but I want to go somewhere I'm not hated on sight, where our children aren't targets, where people who lack can get what they need, where the water is clean and the food is whole, where we matter, where our lives matter. And there I go again. I can't turn it off. Akua kisses me, and I am thankful that sweat and tears are both salty and wet. If she can't tell the difference, I can't be too ashamed. We spoon, our bodies a crescent moon. She whispers that she loves me and believes we can change the world. Humming Mavis Staples, she holds me tight until she falls asleep. I feel her arms go slack, her breathing rhythmic and deep. I wait until she starts snoring before I turn around to look at her, to watch her sleep. I love her, and I would marry her. After all, it's legal now. Thank you. Nastasia's giving me all the feels. She's falling out. I appreciate it. Thank you. Seeing the claps and the wows, I appreciate it. Thank you, Vicky. Thank you, Stephanie. This piece, I wanted to start with this piece to open up a little conversation about, again, that concept of me and we, right? So even though we have our individual lives, we are also always connected to a larger world, to the world that we live in. And so when we think about injustices, I really appreciate that artwork about from Stephanie about like capitalism. You know, our noses are to the ground, right? You've got to work to survive. And that's by design. So when you think about like all the sort of intersecting parts of your identity, whether that's gender or class or sexuality or ability, age, citizenship status, like there's all these different ways that you show up in the world, and none of that goes away when you're on a date or when you are watching a movie with your partner, right? All of those things are always there and part of everything that you do. So just to open up conversation a little bit, does anyone have like examples or times in particular where you feel like, yeah, I'm me and I'm doing this singular thing, but also I'm thinking about all this other stuff in the background? And sometimes that's inopportune, right? Because you know you're trying to focus, but you can't turn off parts of yourself or different ways that community or society is kind of brushing up against you. Mm-hmm. Anybody have any experiences like that? All right. So
seems like
yeah, so Tiffany's talking about her whole life as a mother. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. Because that's one of those things where it's you, but you are also totally responsible for that toddler. Niki, could you respond to that, like as work as an artist and a mother, like how do those things kind of compete and complement each other?
Oh, I mean, I think, it's a significant thing because, tradition or, patriarchy tells us that, the man could do whatever he wants to do, right? He could be in the grass, drawing circles for 20 years and having some banker be a patron. And the woman is supposed to take care of the kids, do this, do that, take care of the household. So it's almost seemed as a selfish act that, yes, I love my son and I gave birth to this son and I want him to be a whole human being, but I also have what I feel is not just a creative connection, but a calling and a passion, and how to juggle the both. I've been to things where you try to make it work. Like a couple of weeks ago, it came up to, I can't remember what it was that triggered the memory. But as when he was really small and I was just like, starting to get my footing in like the professional art space, because I've always been a creative since I was a kid. And I would go to these workshops and just try to like, navigate and see like what, I was looking for outside directions, but I later on find out like, oh, I had to take some time inside to find that direction. But I went to this workshop and, Marley's in this the car seat. He was like 6 months. He was knocked out. But I wanted to be there, right? So, but I didn't have a babysitter. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. They didn't, to this workshop. It's 2 hours. He's pretty quiet. He's chill. And as I was leaving, this older lady said, "Oh, I didn't even know I could bring my dog." And
What?
I was just, yeah, so it was shocking to me because, first of all, he slept through the whole thing. And obviously, if I'm there with a child, I really am dedicated to getting this work. And he was,
Yeah.
so there was that, this thing where, it was made it, she said it enough to be an earshot of me and other people. So, being uncomfortable. So sometimes
Yeah.
as a parent, I had to navigate, like, do I sit this one out? Or do I
Mhm.
do live art with Marley on my hip?
Yeah.
Or people thinking like there's some documentary years ago with women artists, and they said, I think it's
Yeah.
called Who Does She Think She Is?
I
And
like that.
yeah, because these women who wanted to be artists, and unfortunately, a lot of them were in relationships that, went, sideways because they wanted to be an artist. Or a woman, she had to take, the museum says you have great work, but if you want to really sell the work, change your name to a name that sounds more masculine. So,
Mm.
there is the race thing, there's the gender thing, there's the mom thing, and not everybody is as appreciative of, like, I need to create, but I'm also taking care of a
Yeah.
kid. And,
Yeah.
he's also
It's-
a Black little boy, right?
yeah.
So,
So you showing up as, and that's part of the piece, is like, you can't turn it off. You can't say, I'm gonna just show up as this and I'm gonna try to silence all those other things. Like Tiffany dropped in the chat, men are, this is patriarchy we're talking about. So let's call it the system and not the group, right? In patriarchy, men's contributions are valued more. Men's freedoms are valued, are take precedence. And then as women, we are stifled and have different expectations on us. So as whatever your profession or your calling is, if you have made the choice to be a mother, you are in a way like positioning yourself to have to go head to head with patriarchy in this different kind of way. And add to that, having a calling that has at its core like some entrepreneurship or a creative bent to it, where you have different entry points to how you want to deal with capitalism. So again, now we're talking about another thing on top of it, and you can't turn none of that off. Stephanie got in the chat, the more you see what's going on, the more you can't stop seeing it, right? That's, we think about the kind of barrage of like news and everything now, like we definitely can't escape it. And so all of those things are always on your mind, in terms of your identity and how you show up in the world, but then also, your individual needs, and then also the world at large. It's something me and my mother have talked about. My mom's on the line. She shared with me that when she was younger, her mom used to have to tell her, like, just stop worrying about all the other stuff. It's like, I'm trying to show up and do what I need to do, but also I'm thinking about the fact that, there's the world is burning. Civil rights is going on in the South, and dogs are being, unleashed on protesters. Like, but then also I have to go to school, and also I have to watch my little brother. And so it's difficult to navigate. So I see a hand raised. Kyle, I'm going to unmute so you can join the conversation.
Okay, hello. Thank you for responding to my raised hand. And Sheree, thank you so much for sharing that story. It was really beautiful and moving. Really awesome, thank you. And Tiffany, I just want to respond to the question that you asked. Tiffany, her comment about being a mother, and then Niki's story about, her son being referred to as a dog, that's absurd. It's really absurd. But I'm not surprised, and that's the worst of it. And it's really problematic when you become desensitized to all of the violence that you experience on a regular day. or on a day that should be regular. But unfortunately, these things are regular. So I want to just share a little story I have about the responding to the question about how you're supposed to be in a moment, or you're supposed to be your individual self, but you can't, because you're not just, you know, an island, if you will. So I have done many different workshops, worked with youth, and the thing about children is that they need to be protected. So when I think about, you know, community, I most often think about those who need to be protected, you know, elders, you know, things like this. But, you know, mostly I'm really concerned with, you know, the health and well-being of children, young people. So I was giving I had a summer camp that I was managing, and I'm just supposed to fulfill the deliverables, right? So have this many youth and underserved youth. Well, it's not quote, they're actually underserved, but, you know, serve this many youth, get some surveys from them, make sure that they feel like it was an impactful summer camp, things like this, right? But then once you meet the youth and they start telling you about a little bit about themselves, you know that you're connected to them because their stories you can relate to. But not only that, they're dealing with all kinds of trauma that's currently happening. It's not they're healing from trauma, they're in the middle of trauma. And we're just supposed to be making art, right? like college, just make art with the kids, you know? But no, you can't just do that one thing because someone just told you that they don't have sanitary supplies at home. So like, okay, how am I gonna fix this? Gotta go get her something, you know, or this other one is telling me that, you know, they don't have food. So, you know, and how do I make sure that I'm not just giving them snacks, you know? Because where they were coming from, the institution, the national institution that is supposed to serve the youth, their food, the snacks that they're getting are horrible snacks, you know, Oreos, things like this, no nutritional value. So when they come to me, I'm like, not just give them something, I have to make sure it's smart. So you can't just be a teacher, you know, in that moment. You have to be someone who's not a caregiver, but, you know, giving care. So that's what I wanted to share. That's it.
Remix.
Mute myself.
So thank you for sharing that, Carla, because that is at the core of that conversation, is particularly if you're coming from a marginalized community, you're never able to be just one thing. You have to acknowledge and then, you know, respond to what you're seeing. Like Stephanie dropped in the chat, like, it's good to see it and to be in a position to hear about it and then hopefully be able to do something about it, because that's the only way anything's gonna get done, not sweeping it under the rug or pretending it ain't what it is. Facing it, that's the only way it could be changed. It's a James Baldwin quote, until somebody find it on the Google machine. We all on computers. Somebody find that James Baldwin quote for me. Nothing can be changed until it is faced, but not everything that is faced can be changed. Something like that. Somebody will find it. Nikki, you look like you own it, I think. Okay, but yeah, this idea that, you know, when you are in these moments, you know, what is your response? Because you could, it's a choice. You could say, well, that ain't really my problem. I'm looking out for myself. And that's not a spirit of solidarity in any means. Part of being in solidarity, part of being in community is saying, it's not all about my challenges. There it is. Thank you, Nikki. Not everything that is faced can be changed, but nothing can be changed until it is faced. James Baldwin, and that's why he's one of the greatest to ever do it. This idea that you have a choice to decide how invested, how committed, how connected you want to be to others. It is always a choice. A lot of people choose to not. There's things to be gained when you choose to not. But then thinking more broadly, what is the treasure? What is the higher treasure? What is the better treasure? And I think it is seeing yourself in solidarity with other people who are also trying to be the best version of themselves, right? Toni Morrison, in an interview with Charlie Rose, she talks about, racism. And she says, if you're only tall because everyone else is on their knees, you got a problem, right? You got a problem. So if you're only rich because other people live in poverty, if you are only healthy because other people are sick, if you are able to have a loving relationship because you stop others from having loving relationships, if that's your definition of how you identify or how you show up, you got a problem. You got a problem. And at the core of that is this idea that until we all free, ain't nobody free. And then if you want freedom for yourself, you should also want to have freedom for everybody. It's all tied up together. To that end, I'm gonna read another piece. This is an essay that just came out this month. It is from the Sinister Wisdom literary journal, which is the oldest lesbian literary journal in the country. And I'm gonna drop the link to where you could find it in the chat. It's issue 122. Let me get it. All right, so I dropped the link in the chat. It's Sinister Wisdom. And this is about community and finding community. And still that concept of the me and the we. So this is called The Community Garden. Is writing a book like building a garden box? In the spring of 2017, my wife and I replaced the sliding door in our kitchen with French doors. The doors arrived packaged in the largest swath of plastic cling wrap I'd ever seen and framed with long, pale 2x4s and various other planks of wood. The door installation went well. We didn't actually do it ourselves. We had several DIY projects of varying level of success since buying our home 4 years ago, so we hired out. When it was finished, we donated the sliding doors to Habitat for Humanity. What was left after our pre-hung door was installed were several pine planks from the French door packaging. I dragged the wood pieces to the back of the house, uncertain about what to do with it. Throw it out? Would the garbage people even pick it up if I stacked it next to the can? Did I know anybody who needed wood? Was the wood even any good? It took a week for me to decide what to do. And when I did, the decision surprised me. A garden box. I would build a garden box. Never mind that I hadn't built anything from raw materials since 8th grade wood shop, where I batted my eyes and played intimidated girl to get someone else to cut my wood with the bandsaw. My sister Peaches had nearly lost the tip of her finger on a wood saw in her 8th grade wood shop class 6 years earlier. And I still remembered her horror and the story of blood and pain and sawdust. And I still envisioned all too clearly the wiry black stitches bulging alongside her swollen purplish yellow fingertip. Anyway, regardless of who cut my wood in 8th grade, my water pump lamp turned out wonderfully. And for extra credit, I even attached a small bucket to the corner to the corner beneath the curved pump handle that turned the light off and on. And regardless of how long ago 8th grade did or did not feel, as I stared down at that pile of wood in the back of my house, I felt an unexpected confidence and excitement to build a garden box. As I gathered the wood and made a list of tools I would need, my mind traveled back to my first big, overwhelming creative project as an artist. I was 2 years out of grad school and anxiously awaiting responses to the queries I'd sent out to agents and publishers in the hopes of getting my master's thesis manuscript published, or at least represented. In that time that I was waiting, I decided to self-publish a book of short stories. Fiona Zed, my writing partner then and now, encouraged me to get something out into the marketplace. I had performed a few short stories through a storytelling troupe in Chicago, and my work had been published in a few anthologies and collections. Yet when I attended conferences, readings, and literary events, the question was always about the same. Do you have a book? Where can I find your book? Is that story published? Where can I read more of your work? So Fiona, who was delving into self-publishing more seriously as the wider publishing world threw a bit of a cold shoulder to Black lesbian romance and Black lesbian fiction, coached me through a few options. I published my short story collection, Once and Future Lovers, to ebook platforms by midsummer. I even put it on discs to sell at readings and other literary outings. It felt good to have something in the marketplace, and the modest sales of that inspired first step filled me with a sense of pride and accomplishment I hadn't felt since walking across the stage with my degree in hand. By the next year, I won an Australia Lesbian Writers Fund Fellowship and bought a new laptop, my first high quality desk chair, and I paid a designer to help me take Once and Future Lovers, the ebook, from digital to paperback. I had put my writing together before, a sneak printing at an internship, and I spiral bound it. It was a mediocre thriller, and I also published a sad collection of poems that I gave to my family and friends back when I thought writing was a hobby. But self-publishing my book felt different, probably because I was different. I wasn't a hobbyist, I was a writer. I was establishing myself as an artist. Writing, though often identified for its functionality, is also an art that demands creative thinking, wrestling with skill and function and vision. The connection between building the Garden Box and publishing my first book seems obvious now. Building the Garden Box demanded creative thinking, required wrestling with skill and function and vision. I gathered the materials I needed: nails, hammer, tape measure, garden mesh. I decided on a manual saw rather than the power saw. See also Peaches in her gnarled fingertip. And I decided, since I didn't own a sawhorse, I would need to use milk crates that I may or may not have stolen in my 20s. I stared down at the wood pieces for about 20 minutes, then sketched a crude design to guide my work. I remember marveling at how quickly those wood shop lessons came back to me, how fast the understanding of geometric shapes and angles repositioned themselves in my brain. As I measured and cut the wood to form the 5 by 4 foot rectangle that would soon be my garden box, childhood memories mixed themselves among the wood shop and math lessons. I used to take things apart. I used to put things back together. As a middle child, I often played alone and would find myself hiding under the cocktail table, loosening, then tightening the legs, or in the basement, deconstructing my toys just to reassemble them. I used to be my father's helper for any and every home or car project. Smiling through memory and glancing sidelong at my sketch, I cut and stacked and hammered all afternoon. I worked alone, gleefully, the struggle to remember what I could do and the push to create something from raw materials, joyous in a way I didn't know I needed. I made a couple missteps, design flaws mostly, for which I phoned dear friend and Black lesbian visual artist, culminating. She's on the call. Hey. She helped me get unstuck a time or two during the construction. In the end, it all came together. With my hands on my hips and sweat running down my face, I stood and considered my project. I had done it. I built a pine garden box in the center of my backyard. It wasn't quite the same high as holding a published book, but the feeling was surprisingly close. Or maybe a better metaphor is writer as seed. Most writing advice begins with reading twice as much as you write. If you want to be a great writer, you should always be reading. Essentially, if you aren't writing, you should be reading, and vice versa. What I've always found beautiful about that bit of advice is that the connection between writing and reading makes for built-in community. In Words Are My Matter, Ursula Le Guin writes, "Nobody can do anything very much, really, alone. And though you are alone when you read, you are in communion with another mind." She then goes on to say that listening is an act of community. which takes space, time, and silence. Reading is a means of listening. In 2012, when I released that paperback version of Once and Future Lovers, I remember feeling accomplished, but also feeling a rush of gratitude for the community of writers and readers who made that book possible. Holding that book in my hand, I knew then, in a way I wasn't sure I knew before, that writing is about community. It's about creating connections fortified by storytelling and listening, writing and reading. And as the book began to grow into something more beautiful and nourishing than I could have ever expected, I recognized that writing a book is like planting a seed. You surround yourself, you bury yourself in a type of affirming darkness, retreating into yourself to consider memory, to explore your imagination, to root yourself in craft. But then, with support and nurturing and love from your community, you blossom. Alice Walker wrote in her gorgeous book, In Search of Our Mother's Gardens, what is always needed in the appreciation of art or life is a larger perspective. Connections made, or at least attempted, where none existed before. The straining to encompass in one's glance at the varied world, the common thread, the unifying theme through the immense diversity, fearlessness of growth, of search, of looking, that enlarges the private and the public world. Once I finished my first book, I was in search of those connections, and I found just that. We are each other's harvest. Tomatoes, plum, chocolate sprinkle, yellow boy, Roma, okra, jalapenos, bell peppers, purple ones, red ones, yellow ones, orange ones, green beans, cauliflower. The garden box swelled with vegetables. The soil, mixed with carefully curated compost, nourished each plant. Its color so rich, so complex. It flashed brown, then black, then brown, then black in the sunlight. My wife and I tended to our garden daily, a watering routine, a pruning routine, a harvesting routine. We shared vegetables with loved ones, our chest inflated with pride and gratitude. The garden was a commitment in action. It demanded care and attention, and we answered joyfully. Its very livelihood dependent on our active participation. Thank you. So that's a bit, the essay is a bit longer. Thank you, Vicky. And so the full version, of course, can be found in the journal. I dropped the link in the chat. Again, so this sort of shines a light again, thank you, Nastasia, on this concept of we aren't ever really alone, right? And when we acknowledge that, so the acknowledgement of being part of community is only made actionable by deciding to stand in solidarity with others. So you can say like, yeah, of course, I know I'm part of this community, but then the question becomes, well, what do you do about it? Do you show up for yourself and show up for others? It's not an or, it's an and. And are you showing up with individuals in a collective force where those other individuals who make up that group are also showing up for you? Part of that too is like thinking beyond your own immediate needs, but not like in spite of, or not despite of, but in addition to. Again, driving that idea, scarcity is a lie. That's a capitalist attitude, scarcity, that we have to fight one another for resources. Love is infinite. There's enough for everybody. There's enough for yourself, and there's enough for others. And we have to act on that. We got to work on that, right? So in thinking about how my singular action of my book became a way for me to enter this Black lesbian writing community that I didn't even know existed in such bounty, and how that is directly related to, yeah, I'm building this garden box in my backyard, but guess what? The harvest comes out and it's a way to share. So can you think of ways to open up for conversation? Can you think of ways where you've shown up for yourself, but also for others at the same time? Exactly, Nikki, I was about to say that, at the same time. Do you have any examples of showing up for yourself and others at the same time?
Well, I have a few, but I'm gonna see if other people want to talk.
And feel free to use the chat if you don't want to unmute or turn your video on. That's fine. Showing up for yourself and others at the same time. Because the world likes to make us think that that's not possible, that you either gotta go for yourself or go for others. And that's not true. That's not true. If you think about it, Stephanie's still here with us. She just kind of illustrated that in sharing her work, right? She's like, yeah, I've got work that I put out for myself as an artist. I'm trying to make some Skrilla so I can pay my bills. But also, I have this political work that is about something larger that I'm gonna make free because I want to contribute this part to the community while also creating work for myself. So we just opened with an excellent example, showing up for yourself and others at the same time.
Well, I'll share a couple. I mean, I think that just in the work that I do, you know, opportunities that are given to me, I try to collaborate and bring in other people as much as possible. Even if it's something that's for me and it could be like, ooh, this is, you know, I could have it all for me. I do like to share, or I do like to consider, like sometimes when I may not have something that might not be like so financially feasible, and those who have showed up for me, regardless, you know, when I first started doing art shows or just art performance and community outreach, I'm like, look, you know, I'd go to performers. I don't have no money. I'm an artist just like you. This is what I'm trying to do. It's for the community, it's for this. And, you know, the earlier years, I had a lot of performers and poets and stuff, or just different people say, you know what, I normally charge, but I love what you're doing, I'm in. So when I do get those opportunities that's, you know, have some financial aspects to it, I try to go back to those people, but I like to bring in these things, having discussions, the circle, what's your elephant? All of these projects, you know, I have my art practice and then the social, but I do like to have collaboration. I do like to bring in other people. I do like to say, okay, I don't want you to just participate. I know you got some skill sets that you can shine as well. And I want to bring that, like, yeah, this person's supporting me, but they also have their own thing going on.
Yeah. So my sister, Tiffany Wilson, she was talking about motherhood earlier, but like, Tiffany is a tarot reader and light worker. And so she has a YouTube channel. And so she, of course, charges for individual readings because capitalism, right? But also she offers, like, she goes on Instagram and does collective readings for the collective, you know, for free. Anybody can tune in. And so what we're talking about, like you just said, Niki, these situations where, yes, the world demands, because of the systems, and again, I always want to make sure we're naming the systems. Capitalism demands that we have to work to survive. It is terrible. We need to make some changes, but that is the world we live in. But also, right, we're talking about things happening at the same time. You also have gifts and talents that you can share with the world in a way that feeds your heart and feeds the community. My work as a writer, writing books, essays, things like that, that's my passion, that's my gift, that's my joy. But also when I think about my experience and my connections and, you know, relationships, well, how can I use that to serve community? And then that's how Kitchen Table Literary Arts was founded. Here's an opportunity for me to share my knowledge, my experience, and then also help empower others. And so the community just grows and grows and grows. And I feel like when we do that in practice, we become living proof that we are not in an either or world, right? We are living proof that you can care for yourself and care for others. And it should be something we aspire to. So I see Carla has her hand raised. I'm gonna mute myself so she can chime in.
Yeah, thank you. I do have one example I wanted to share about around that. But only wanted to share this example because it illustrates how if you see outside of yourself in the midst of doing something for yourself, that transcends even that initial sharing. So, it just builds branches that, the more you do good, I think the more good is going to happen in the world. Like building that community, what you were talking about, Sheree, in that last reading, finding the lesbian community, they're there. But it took this one person, this one writer, to connect you to other writers. And the more you connect to those writers, everyone gets connected, right? So you share your food with someone, guess what? They're sharing it with their family. So the more you're sharing and caring, it's just the same as the more evil you put out into the world. Whatever you put out into the world, it's going to go somewhere. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. But so as the curator for the Spading Museum, I could totally curate all the exhibitions, period. And I still get my same paycheck handled. But I look at the budget and say, where can we have guest curators come in? And then when the guest curator comes in, I've had a couple of guest curators. When they come in, they bring in the artists that they're excited to share with the world, right? And then they bring in their own research. And then that connects us to people who are specialists in that area. So the more I share my space, and of course you have to have a certain amount of space to share. And if you do and you share it, guess what? That's going to have an actual trickle down effect. So that's the reason I'm sharing that example is because it's so important to understand that you're not losing by sharing. And there's no loss for me to share that opportunity with someone else. It's something for them, and then guess what? They're going to share that with someone else. And then that ball keeps rolling. And this is the good kind of snowballing. So that's it.
So I really love that, Carla. Thank you. Particularly that idea of, the actual trickle down, the actual, and it's even kind of more than trickling down. I feel like it's like a burst. It's like a radiant that can go out in all directions. And part of that too, when I think about solidarity specifically, is if we are coming together and we're all bringing our unique perspective, our unique gifts and talents, like there's no limit to what we can do, right? And so when we think about activism and think about activism through the lens of solidarity, when we're a group stronger together, think about who you can all have on your squad, right? Some people's activism is going to be running for local office and getting involved in politics in order to change legislation. Some people's activism is going to be doing a die-in at the Capitol with signs and protest. Someone else's activism is going to be showing up to volunteer to help communities in need. Another person's activism is going to be art making, right? And having programs like this where we're having these conversations. So if we're all working together with a common goal, we're attacking it from all sides. From all sides. And that's when things can hopefully start to be dismantled and crumble, right? I see Nastasia wants to share. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. So I was listening to everyone and I was kind of reluctant to share because I'm not like in the art community and I don't create anything that I feel like really gives back to the community. But I do work in healthcare and majority of my patients are Black people as well as differently abled people of varying ages. And I find that we're all instructed to treat everyone in this robotic way, get the information, do your job, next patient, like that. But when I see people from my community, Black women, children, all different kinds, I feel like, oh, I need to do more. I need to do more for her, for him, for them. And when I do more in the realm of like, instead of just saying, you know, why are you here? How can I help you? What do you eat? Are you stressed out? Is there something going on that's contributing to this health problem? Because oftentimes when you dig deeper and you ask these questions, you find out more information that leads to the patient being able to take care of themselves, or they don't have to rely on money to get this procedure done. It's like, well, actually, if you can control the stress this way, or if you cut this out of your diet, anything like that, it can make a bigger change in their life, and that influences them personally, and then their children, and then their friends and partners, and that spread of information. So I feel like I feel good to do that. It fulfills me in my job. But then, the higher ups, the management are like, you're not being a robot. I get paid the same as everyone else, even though I'm doing more work, and I get in trouble for doing above and beyond my job. But then, it's worth it because I feel like I'm helping my community, and seeing their response to that information, seeing them get better or improving some way makes me feel like, okay, I'm doing the right thing here. So I continue to do that despite not being compensated or feeling like I did a good, getting the good job from my employer or whatever. That's it.
Thank you for sharing that, Nastasia, because that draws back to that idea, like you have a choice. You can decide. You can say, you know what? I don't know these people. I don't care about their mouth. I'm here to do my job, get my check, and then go home. But because you are making the decision to walk as a compassionate, caring individual in a land that does not want us to be that, right? They don't want us to be that. There are people, organizations, there's an entire system that thrives on us treating each other badly. And so when you make that decision to say, no, I'm not going to participate in that part, that helps us move the needle. And like you said, they take that information and that care that you gave them, they take it home. And now they are possibly changing the trajectory of oral health and physical health for their entire family, which is beautiful. And so again, that fits right in line with like whatever you are called to do, seeing it as a way, how can I show up for myself, but also show up for others? The difficult part of that, which Nastasia kind of hit on too, is we don't get compensated for it. And then that can wear on us sometimes. And so that's why I say it's gotta be a and, right? You do what you can, you put your energies towards helping others as much as you can, but also in addition, in tandem, you have to also care for yourself, right? And when we're a group though, if you need to take a little break, that don't stop the show, right? And so that's another added benefit of working towards something collectively. If it turns out, I think about Kitchen Table, for example, I don't run it alone. I have a dynamic financial director, Jasmine Smith. I have an excellent outreach director, Slam Anderson. I have a facilitator and community advocate in Silk, Jasmine Hindus. If I'm feeling fatigue, or if there's things where, like we're there for each other. One of the books that I've kind of used as the center of my work as a community advocate and as an artist is Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy. I'll drop that in the chat for y'all. It's an amazing book. And what it does is it's asking us, how can we do our community work? How can we do our artwork and show up for each other in a way that holds space for self-care, community care? Yeah, Stephanie, you got to read this book. It's off the chain. So I dropped the link in the chat. The link I provided is to the independent press that publishes it. So Emergent Strategy, it's really asking you to rethink to rethink scarcity mindset, to rethink competition. Niki had dropped in the chat that, you know, so much of the way capitalism is set up, and even any oppressive system, racism, classism, like all of that is set up for scarcity and fear and all of that is driven by keeping us afraid that we won't survive. Our best chance of survival is to link up with each other. And that's full stop. Our best chance of survival is to be together and to work together. And that's not about competition. It's about how can we come together as partners? How can we come together as a collective? I mean, even I guess, you know, historically, if you look at any movement that has attempted to bring people together, especially people across racial lines, across sexuality, across gender, like any movement that's attempting to bring everybody together has been effectively squashed, right? They know that that's the key to the city. And so we gotta be committed to it and keep bringing it to them every day for ourselves and for each other. Yeah, that's right, Vic. Vicky says, truth, good attracts good, love brings love. Yes, equitable and collective actions are what we to live for, personal and business, to make a change. Yeah, and it's and. So I'm loving us embracing the and. It is both at the same time, right? You do not have to choose. That is a fallacy of scarcity as survival, right? This idea that you, in order to survive, you must crush the competition. You must, you know, kill or be killed. It's like, no, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. And we don't have to, I guess, is the larger part of it. So I'm gonna read one last thing. And this is a piece that was published in the 805 Journal, which is out of Manatee County in Florida, 805 Lit Journal. If there's any writers or poets, visual artists on the line, they are always looking for submissions. So I'm dropping here. This was for the women's, this issue was in celebration of women's suffrage, women having the right to vote. And the way they did it, the way the 805 Journal did it, I was really proud, was sort of also feature the Black women who worked to help women secure the right to vote, because there were some white women who were like, yeah, we want to vote, but they shouldn't vote. And so the way that they approached the journal and the sharing of that history was just really inclusive. And so I love it. So I'm gonna share this piece with y'all. And then I got one last kind of discussion point for us in the chat and whatnot as well. Oh, did I lose it? Oh, here it is. Okay. This is called No Apologies. When it burst open against the ground, I winced. You never move suddenly. You always plan. An umbrella, an extra pair of shoes, cradling the small melon in your arms. You wouldn't let me carry it, wouldn't let me see you cry. I got it, you said. I watched you raise, then release. drops of wet like reverse rain, pale pink on white and wheat, splotches on tanks and khaki fronts, shapes that have no name. Geometry confuses, reason ruins romance. Pieces perfect and deep red, beady eyes stare up at us amazed. I'm sorry, you said. I don't have a knife. Planted in green grass, watermelon woman between us, promise sticky on our fingers, lips, and chins. There are 3 things you never have to apologize for: love, tears, and breaking open fruit the best way you know how. Thank you. That piece was inspired by a panel that I was on many years ago with Jewel Gomez. And afterwards, she did a workshop. Jewel Gomez is a Black lesbian poet and writer. No, it's funny. I was talking with Niki about one of the reasons I call myself a text-based artist is because I really want to open up my understanding of what my writing can do. And so this is actually my one and only published poem that's in the world. It was my first time submitting a poem. I was very nervous. Another poet, a poet, Crystal Smith, who's actually in the Sinister Wisdom and the Let's Talk anthology that I read from earlier. Crystal Smith, I had tweeted about it being Poetry Month and how I don't write poetry because I don't think my poems are any good. And so she's like, I bet you got some good poems. She's like, I dare you to submit one this month. And so I submitted a poem and it got accepted. So I was completely blown away. So this is my one and only poem, which is, I think I'm gonna lean into the text-based artist bit that way I can, which is a identifier that comes from another poet, Anastasia Renee. I met her at a writer's conference, and she said she calls herself a text-based artist so as to broaden what she can do with words. And I was like, I like that. She's like, you can borrow it. And I was like, I'm not gonna give it back. And so we had a laugh because that's a corny joke. And I love corny jokes. And so I use that text-based artist to open up what I can do with words as a way to explore and play in my art making. So that's my one and only poem, Nastasia. That's why it's so short. But it was inspired by this workshop. And so during the workshop, Jewel Gomez got a phone call. And I don't know who it was, but I could guess it was someone near and dear to her heart because of the way she smiled when she looked at the caller ID. And then she said, I have to take this. I'm so sorry, I have to take this. And we were all like, okay. So then she's on the phone over in the corner, kind of talking hushed voices, but she's like smiling. And then she had like her eyes moistened a bit. She came back and she was like, oh, just love is grand. And then she had this little tear come out her eye. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. She started apologizing. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And so I actually started that poem with that last line. You don't ever have to apologize for love, and you don't ever have to apologize for tears. I wish we talked more about how tears are as involuntary as kind of like golf ball laughter, when something's funny and you just bust out laughing. Tears are like that too. And tears are also dynamic in that, they're in response to so many things. We can cry laughing, we can cry out of anger, we can cry when we're frustrated, we can cry when we're, sad, we cry when we're happy. I like, let's embrace the full breadth of tears. This is coming from somebody who used to hate crying. And then, you go to therapy and you cry a lot. And then you realize, you know what, this is actually really cleansing and good for me. And then you start trying to see tears through this other lens. But in that piece, I'm talking about not being apologetic for your feelings, for what you feel, for what you have to do in order to find your way to wholeness. And I guess I wanted to end with that because I wanted to encourage all of you to not apologize for showing up the way that you need to show up, to not apologize for being your full self, to not apologize for asking for what you need and what you want and going after it, to not apologize for standing up for yourself or your community. There's no apologies here. It's just the doing. It's just the practice. It's just the love. There's no apologies for that. Exactly, Stephanie. Vulnerability ain't nothing stronger. Ain't nothing stronger. And then in that too is bringing that strength in numbers, right? How we see each other, how we show up for each other. That's only done by letting other people in and by putting ourselves out there. And those are vulnerable positions. So we've talked about all these sort of broad concepts of community and showing up for ourselves. In the chat, if you're up for it, I'd like you to think about what we mean when we talk about community and just how broad it is. You can start with thinking about your community based on your identity and how you show up in the world, but then also other communities that you're in. For example, Nastasia said, you know, if we think about her identity, not only is she a Black woman, but she is also in the healthcare community and providing care that way. So drop in the chat, what communities are you a part of? And I mean, just list them, because community is not just this one thing, right? Community is such an expansive word. It's really communities when we think about it. So what are some of the communities that you are involved in? And you could drop them in the chat, or you could unmute if you want to share your voice. So Niki's talking about her intersections, nice. Afro-Latina, Black, lesbian, queer, mom, creative advocate. Stephanie is, community of all living things, plants and animals. Yes, all the things around us. That's wonderful. I appreciate that. All right. Well, that's my time. Thank you so much, creative community, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Niki. Thank you everybody who showed up for the conversation and the showcase. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I'm thankful and delighted to be in community with y'all. So thank you.
Thank you so much. The links that's in the Zoom chat, I'm also putting it over to the Facebook. And I'm going to include a link to, there's a questionnaire. So I'm hoping everyone gets a chance to do this. Thank you so much, Sheree, for being a part of this, a part of the last week's session. I really enjoy how like your work is like, there's a couple of things going, there's lanes, and they just kind of, you think it's going this way and then it goes whoop, swoop, swoop. I just love it, how you put it together. And I think Vicky said something about painting with your words. I love especially like the first piece where you're talking to a lover and having an experience with a lover, but then all of these other things that are kind of interlaced and mentioned. And I think that's the beauty of art, right? That we could use art to kind of talk about, like if you went to talk about any of those points, it could be, you know, challenging, provocative, like, oh, I don't want to talk about it. But when you weave it in with the art and weave it in with something else, now it's more palatable. Now it's more like, oh, I could take this. So, you know, I love how that piece really exemplified that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
I want to piggyback what Niki was talking about with your piece, just to comment on it. Definitely weaving, but I also felt like I was on a roller coaster when you were reading that, because at one moment I'm like, oh, this is so sweet. And then I'm like, oh, this is so sad. But then I'm like, oh, this is so sweet again. I'm like, oh, this makes me want to cry. Like, to go through all those emotions just by listening to words, you know, and text-based artists. I definitely felt that. It's the same thing if you look at a piece of visual artwork and you can feel, you know, all the emotions put into that artwork and how you react to it. The same thing with your text-based artistry. I think that's really great that you're able to do that. And, you know, it was a pleasure listening. Thank you for reading.
Thank you so much, Nastasia. I appreciate that. And thank you for coming. Thank you. I appreciate it.
And there was a part where right before Nastasia had spoke about the healthcare, and you made some parts about like the different types of advocacy, right? And I'm glad that you highlighted it because that was also part of when we were putting together this program, because when people think social justice, one thing a lot of time people only associate it with race and racism, right? And so just beautiful having all these other examples of it, but also that sometimes people feel like, oh, it's only a protest, you know? So, and then some people feel like, I don't want to protest, so how can I help? Or is that the only way? You know, and I love that you kind of highlighted the different ways, because that's kind of part of, you know, the concept behind this program, showing different ways that we could use our skill sets, you know, our privilege, our access, our whatever we have to do that. And then Nastasia talked about, well, I'm not an artist, but here's what I do. And I think that was just so timely because, you know, we don't, it doesn't have to, whatever our advocacy is, whatever points we have to make, it, you know, if we like, oh, I'm not an artist, or I'm not a politician, or I'm not a this person, I'm not a that, then we take away from where she's like, oh, I'm helping people and giving people, like someone coming to a dentist, they're coming that one time, but if you're mentioning and inviting to them, well, what about your health? What are you, that's something that could be long lasting. So it just kind of underlines how we each have our own gift to give. And they all matter. And it's also that, you know, kind of connects for me in that, like learning who we are and showing up in all those spaces unapologetically, because then we get to share those things without like this thought of like, oh, I don't fit in here, or I don't fit in that, or I don't fit into this ideal. Like we could just do, you know, and put that out. Check the Facebook. So anyone else has any questions, comments, feedback, inspiration, anything they want to share? Check that. So yeah, I'm gonna, you know, call this a, well, this is Saturday. I don't know where you're at on the planet, if you're in Eastern time or not. It's 2:34 on a Saturday. And I really am so grateful for each and every one of you for participating, for showing up, for listening on the live, on the Facebook. You know, people who are going to watch this later, thank you so much for listening. And you know, the workshop and showcase parts are, you know, closing out. There's still a culminating event going on, but also more importantly, this program is not just meant to be like just like this one-off thing, right? It's like something where you could take and hopefully not just be inspired, but motivate to do things within your household, your community, your organization, within your capacity. So it's definitely a jumping off point or continuation of whatever you have going on, or to start something if you feel you haven't, you know, started anything yet. So I really appreciate that. Stephanie, thank you all for your wisdom and such a great conversation. Absolutely, you're welcome, and thank you for sharing your work and being a part. So with that being said, there is a questionnaire. If you know, if you all can be so kindly to click on it, there's a couple of questions. It really helps us with programming and future programming, as well as, you know, there's questions that people from the grantors, they're like, well, what happened? You know, how do people connect to these things?
Can you drop it again? It was kind of far up on the chat.
Sure. So.
Perfect.
Yeah, so, you know, the Community Foundation, they have an Art of Community grant that they do every year. And last year, because of what the world was going through, or have been going through, but now that people have cell phones, now they're realizing, wait, what's going on here? They wanted projects that were based in social justice and things like that. So it's nice that there's some people giving more time and space for these type of programs, because, you know, some of us know there's so many that's going on that, you know, that people may not be aware of. So I'm glad that an organization like Community Foundation is putting some, you know, financial support to programs like this, and hopefully inspire other organizations to do these, right? So I'm thank you for being here. I think, oh, someone has their hand raised. Oh, Dea, yeah. Hopefully I pronounced that right. You could correct me if I'm wrong.
Hey, Nikki. Yeah, Udaya, that's correct. Thank you so much for having this. And will you be sending that questionnaire by email too? Because I'm on my phone right now, so I don't know if I can.
Yeah, so if you RSVP'd on the Zoom, I have the email and I could send out an email. If you haven't RSVP, well, yeah, I guess if you're on the Zoom, you have to RSVP. So I'll send out an email with the questionnaire. That's a great point. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this session. I was just listening to the radio the other day, and they were talking about something happening in Miami-Dade where they're planning to build like development and warehouses, and folks are protesting because it's going to disrupt the water supply and things like that. I'm wondering how we can also protest that in an artistic way, or I'm just throwing that out there as a thought, because it's not just going to affect Miami-Dade, it's going to affect all of us. And I think that, it's a pretty big deal. I'll try to get the specifics. I know they mentioned the Audubon Society, protesting against it, and other folks that are involved in climate change, but I think it's pretty huge, and we can't let them get away with that. It's going to destroy a very significant part of the Everglades and our water supply.
I think if I'm not mistaken, there was already something posted where they were trying to dig an underground parking lot when we're only 20 feet above water, and something erupted. So, and Stephanie, I don't know if you have the link to the group. There is a Facebook group, I think Robin Haynes, because there's something going on in Fort Lauderdale, and she did start a group where people were speaking out, but that I remember seeing something about that there. So I don't know if Stephanie, you remember the name of the group? Let's see.
Sorry, I didn't know I could unmute myself. Yes, there's this, I was trying to explain it in chat, but it's so much easier to say in speech. There's this park that was promised after the Fort Lauderdale took a vote, and everybody voted to have this big piece of land. It's 2.5 acres downtown as a park. But now the city mayor and commissioners have made this backroom deal with this developer to put some kind of like entertainment complex on it. And they're going to be cutting down, there's 100 trees there. They promised to save 5 trees, and they were going to put an underground parking garage, but I think they're not going to do that anymore. But there's still this deal going on. It's really destructive. And, people in the neighborhood need a place to walk and commune with nature and be at peace, and they don't really need another nightclub or place of profit making. So Robin Merrill is spearheading this campaign to save the green space as a park. And I think it's called Save Our Green Space, if you want to look it up on Facebook. And there's another group that she has put together on Facebook. I'm going to look it up too, specifically for artists. And it's called Artists Against the Arts Park, because that's what the developers are going to be calling it.
I just I found the group, I put it in the chat. So, and I know that was, it started from what's going on in Fort Lauderdale, but they did mention what's going on in Miami. And I would say, looking at Facebook, the groups, because there's different groups going on in Facebook or meetup.com where you can find pockets of people who share the same, concept of taking care of Earth and doing things ethically. And so they may have a group that's local to Miami that's already doing that type of work. But I would say that is a good starting point, because at least you connect to a network with other people who are concerned, and it's not just Fort Lauderdale. You might meet some, Miami, or you might need to start it and put it out there and see who connects to that and grows it. But I think that's something I did see in that group or coming up. Anyone else? Oh. So, and if anyone, so this is also on Facebook under Niki Lopez Creative, this video. So if anyone has other links, feel free to, drop it into the comment section, because anyone who watches it can still go back. Like all the links that was mentioned here is also on the Facebook. And when the YouTube goes out, I'll also put it onto the YouTube as well. Stephanie said there's another group called Artists for Climate Action. Okay, let me see if I find that. There was also a lady that dealt with climate change years ago with, there's a group in Miami. I have to look it up, but I think, let me see if I can find it. Artists for Climate Change. So I think that's, yeah, Artists for Climate Change, Climate Action is a place for artists interested in bringing their artistic skills and creativity into action to address the effects of climate change. We welcome artists from anywhere who wish to share how they're taking action on climate change with their art. Emphasis on discussions will be on how Florida resident artists can effectively collaborate with new and ongoing activists, climate campaigns in Florida, posts on forum and aesthetics of activist art group members, and find particularly effective or useful to consider are also welcome, whether or not they are directly related to climate change. So that is a group. And I put that in the chat. So thank you all for being here again. It's Saturday. I don't know if it's rainy wherever you are. It was a little rainy this morning. I really appreciate everyone who's here on this call. Definitely please consider spreading the word, spreading the video. There's still a lot of information, even though the program itself is technically coming to an end. There's still so much valuable information in each one of these videos. So that's something very simple. Share it. Someone else could get inspired, motivated, learn something, consider something newly, or continue something that they discontinued at some point. So those are all different ways to also be a part of forward movement. So I'm going to say have a wonderful afternoon and hope to see you all at another time. Peace. Thank you.